people that want, we're going to have 5.
Let's see where we're at now.
There'll be 5 people. We checked all of them. We were winning how many people wanted to watch this versus all the other people that have webinars set up.
Okay.
So it's like whatever it is, they're on Navionics, they have like all the webinars for the month or the year or whatever. And we had the most people.
We're recording, right? It's like 35 people. All right, I think you're good.
Where's the little box that, yeah, we can see us. Oh, there it is.
Right there.
Yay.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Are we ready?
Well, we're still getting some people coming in, so we're going to let some people fill in.
Hi, Mom.
And we'll get started in a minute, hopefully. You're not even on the right page. On page 2. Oh my gosh.
Mm. Oh, is that who's logged in?
Mm-hmm.
I see my mom on there. Oh, there's my grandma.
You want to get going?
Sure.
All right, we're going to go ahead and start our offshore webinar. I'm Mike Readling. This is our special guest, Christina Weber, who's becoming more of a regular than a special guest, but we still get to call her that.
I'm going to start collecting a check here soon.
Exactly. We're going to give her a hat and everything. Just a quick little background on me. I was born and raised in Jupiter, lived in Tampa, Key West, Orlando, a lot of other places, and fished all those spots. Hopefully able to bring a little bit of knowledge from those spots to where we're at today. I used to guide here in Stuart, and now I'm currently the chairman of the Snook and Gamefish Foundation and the Navionics Marine Specialist for Florida, which means I drive around and talk to a lot of people and fish not nearly as much as I would like to. But I still get to get out on the water plenty, and not nearly as much as this girl right here, though. This is Christina Weber. Again, born and raised in Palm Beach County. You get 2 Florida natives looking at you, which is very rare.
Very, very rare. Very rare.
She will tell you she's been fishing her entire life, and she's got the pictures to prove it. She, besides running a tournament in Wellington for children, she's also a tournament kayak angler and runs guide services here in Stuart and down in Panama. One of the things I like about Christina is she doesn't like fishing out of boats. So while I get to talk about all the fun boat stuff and that, and she gets to handle the kayak and all the heavy work. So we're going to let her focus a little bit more on kayak fishing tonight, kind of how does she sets up when she's fishing offshore. A little bit about how I set up fishing offshore, but we'll go over a lot of the differences and some of the similarities. And just to kind of keep you in line with what's going on, we're going to talk about how to set up your kayak or your boat. Obviously, it's a little bit different for both and a little bit more fun on her side probably than our side. Looking for the right spot to start to fish. That's probably a little bit of pre-fishing. Things to look for when you're at your house, and then a little bit what you're looking for in the water. Your rigging, your rods, reels, line, what we use. Baits. I think offshore we both like our live baits, but we'll talk a little bit about artificial and how to fish those artificial baits as well. And then boat and kayak positioning is probably one of the toughest things to do offshore because it takes into account about 17 different conditions. We're going to let Christina talk a lot about that because in a kayak you don't get quite as many shots as you do in a boat with twin 300s on it. So we'll let her figure out that and give you some insiders. And then, and this is the fun part for me, we're going to let her talk about what happens when you get a sailfish right up to the side of your kayak. I know when we're in our boat, we get to reach over and maybe bill it and get the circle hook out and everything's great, but she's got a little bit tougher job, so we're going to do that. And then at the end, we're going to draw 2 names out of the Navionics hat, and one for a free Navionics hat and one for a Night Eyes headlamp. That looks in.
And an S-beamer.
And an S-beamer. Very good.
marine grade S-beaner. These are brand new.
All right.
Yeah.
You could be the first one on the water with an S-beaner.
Okay, well, that's false because I've been using them for a while.
Second one on the water with an S-beaner. So the first thing we want to talk about is kind of how to set up. And we're going to let Christina talk real quick because I'm sick and I don't want to talk anymore.
And Lord knows, I like to talk.
So this is a picture of her that I stole off of her website. It looks like she's got about 17 different kinds of rods. She has a flag. She has a sleeping bag up front.
That's not a
Looks like a satellite phone and a spear. So we're going to let her go through and fill us in on exactly what she's got going on and what you kayak fishermen can look for when you're fishing offshore.
I wish I had a sleeping bag, actually, now that you think about it. Some days I really wish I did. That's a fish bag, to clarify to everyone. And yes, it's too small. I mean, it looks giant, but it really is, it's very small. Everything sticks out of it. So if you're going to fish offshore in the kayak, there's really not very many things you need. I try to keep it pretty simple, but in this photo, it does not look that way. It is still very simple. This was day one of a tournament, and I wasn't really quite sure 100% of what all I was doing, which is why I had like 15 rods with me. But I have a rod for bait. I have 2 rods for live bait, and then I have a jigging rod, and then I had I don't know what other rod I have. I think I had a rod for probably throwing like a plug or something, like if something came up near the boat, I could kind of pitch an artificial bait at it. But some of the most important tools are going to be your radio, which you'll see. And there's some really great accessories in kayaks that you can, what I like is the Railblazer mounts, because they're like a plug and play mount. It's kind of like a ram mount, but they're a little bit more cleaner, and they don't get hung up on a bunch of stuff. So if you're not using them, they're not in your way. But also they have a ton of accessories. So almost any type of fishing that you're going to be doing, you can plug a bunch of stuff in there. Like in this photo, you'll see my radio. I don't use my radio all the time, but I do need it in all my tournaments, and I do need it a lot of times when I'm offshore, because even if I'm with someone, they're really, really far away from me. And I need to be able to communicate. You don't want to have to pull your safety purposes, I guess, too. There's always that, but who likes to be safe? And then I have the cage gaff, which looks like a spear, but it did originate in Hawaii. It's been like a kayak thing. I don't think it's necessarily necessary. I wouldn't tell you that like you have to use this kind of gaff. I think it's just whatever works for you. It is a little easier. I find it easier. I find it safer. I just like it better. I kind of just got used to, I have to hold the rod, I have to loosen the drag, I have this fish, I have so many moving parts. If I only have to make one movement with my hand, I think it's just safer. But some guys carry your original hook gaff, and then they carry the cage gaff. So there's a bunch of different options. You definitely want to have a safety flag. Railblazer also makes a safety flag, and they also can plug into those starport mounts that you have on your kayak. So I have them on all 4 corners, and it gives me those opportunities to pull things in and out when I'm using them and when I'm not. But you'll want to have the light only does so much, but unless you're out in the dark, you don't need it. But the flag is a big deal. These guys in these boats they got 100 things going on, and if we can give them the best opportunities to see us, then we need to take advantage of that. And having that orange flag is a really, really big deal. I struggle and I lose guys in kayaks that I'm fishing with, but I always can see that red or that orange flag. It wouldn't be an option. They're very expensive. You're like $100 for a flag. It kind of is one of those things like, oh, I'll just get it later. Like I just bought all these other things. Like I want more tackle. It's something you can't really skip. So, but I think those are the main points.
So now I know when I go offshore, when I'm fishing, we usually have 2 spinning rods, 2 conventional reels. We have a couple of each kind. It looks like you've got one of each. Do you double up on anything, or do you try to have one rod for each?
Well, I came from like big boat world, so I like to use a lot of conventional reels. And so that's just kind of what I had in my arsenal at home. But I've noticed a lot of people that come from maybe not fishing at all and just jumped into kayak fishing, they like the spinning reels. It's what they're used to. It is easier. You don't have to there's just so much going on in the kayak already. And now you're trying to level wind and you have all these other things. But I use both. I have, my spinning rods are usually going to be for lighter things, for my sabiki, for a smaller plug that I may just cast around or I may troll it. Anything larger is going to go all on conventional. All my live baits go on conventional. My vertical jigging goes on conventional, which I don't suggest. If you can go in a spinning reel, if you're going to vertical jig, especially from the kayak, please do it. Save yourself a world of pain. But I had everything. I was fishing from a boat, so that's just the stuff I had to make it work. But I think that's it. Yeah.
And just real quick, there's a Q&A tab up at the top of your screen. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in there, and we'll try to answer them on the way. If not, we'll get them at the end. Real quick, that bait bucket right behind you, is that your live bait bucket?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because I receive this question all the time on the internet. What do you do for live bait? And people spend $300-400 on all these really awesome live wells that have been designed for kayaks. But at the end of the day, one of my favorite things with fishing is to underthink the process. 5-gallon bucket. It does a better job than any other live well I've ever seen. I know guys that try to pull things in the water. There's so many things that mess your drift up, and sometimes we can't really afford to do that in a kayak, because one false wave or one false move and it can be game over. So the 5-gallon bucket works great. If you can do a larger bucket of any sort, it doesn't have to be 5 gallons, but a bucket. Just a bucket. It works wonders.
So for the different types of rods, and I kind of touched on this a couple minutes ago, when I go out in my boat with 55 different rod holders, not 6 stuck behind my little seat, I try to have as many different kinds of rods as I can.
Complainer.
I know, right? Well, it's all about comfort. I use heavier rods for trolling. Medium heavy rods. You still want a little bit of backbone for my flat lines, or when I'm fishing the bottom or the reefs, or vertical jigging. And then the most important rod in this entire PowerPoint slide is the pitch rod, or the oh crap rod, as we like to call it, which is not really what we call it, but you get the idea. And that is the one right there by the console. When the dolphin swims by your boat while you're fighting the other 3 dolphins, you want to have something that you can pitch to that dolphin, whether it's going to be a chunk bait, or I always leave a Rapala X-Wrap on there, and I use the dolphin-colored X-Wrap because dolphins love eating dolphins. But I always have that rod right where I can grab it. If I've got 2 people fighting fish at the back of the boat and 2 more swim by, we've got the pitch rod to throw right to them. Easily the most important rod on the boat whenever we're offshore like that, because we've caught dolphin, we've caught cobia. We've even caught sailfish that have come swimming by the boat coming up our chum line. So always, always, always have your pitch rod. Do you have a pitch rod on your kayak?
I do. I was going to say, to piggyback off that, I always battle this, I don't want to bring a pitch bait rod. Sometimes I don't use it. It's in the way, but I can't get it out of my head, because on the day that you need it, you won't have it. So you just always bring it, because it's so true. When you least expect it, you have these beautiful baits out, and whatever it is wants to just swim, especially in the kayak. I think that we attract a lot of weird things. Fish are attracted to anything. Boats, it doesn't matter how big it is, how small it is. But I think something about the kayaks, we're really quiet, we drift really slow. I think there's something more natural about our presence in the water that brings bait to want to be sanctioned underneath the kayak, which draws everything else in. So always bring that pitch bait, that rod, whatever you want to use on it. I don't care.
And a gaff. Always have a gaff. I never had a gaff on my boat.
What?
I never, forever. We would go out and I would either try to net them, or we would grab them by the tail. And then one day we tried to grab about a 35-pound dolphin by the tail and things went bad quickly.
Don't you tell people?
Now I've got like a gold-plated gaff that will never disappear. So always have a gaff. Always make sure that you have somebody using the gaff that knows what they're doing with the gaff. Or
no, that's no fun. Give it to your buddy who's retarded.
Or you'll have people trying to hook fish with the back end of it, or you'll have people hooking your line with the gaff. But always have that, and then I have 2 coolers. Do you have 2 coolers?
No, I got my lap.
2 coolers, one for all your drinks and one for all your fish.
My sleeping bag.
That is the other must-have, because I'm not trying to put a bunch of fish on top of all my drinks and running out of room. It's 2 coolers.
You know what I don't like? I don't mind having 1 cooler, but what bothers me is when I'm taking a sip and it smells like fish. Like, I already smell like fish. Like, I don't want my drink to smell like fish.
Exactly.
That's like the only reason I want 2 coolers.
All right, so now we're rigged up and ready, and we're headed offshore. But, all right, we're going to try to get crazy fancy here for a minute.
Yeah.
I know, but I see a question from Guillermo, who said we should follow Key West Kayaking on YouTube. So we'll follow Key West Kayaking on YouTube later. Headed offshore. I'm going to try to go to a chart, just kind of show you guys what I'm looking for when I'm planning a trip. I'm going to use the St. Lucie Inlet as my home inlet, just to kind of show you what I look for. And then we're going to let Christina show you what she looks for, because what she looks for is a whole lot different than what I look for. So we're going to go to this is the web app on Navionics.
Is that what it's supposed to look like up there?
Supposed to look like that.
It's just like this, right?
Yep. Should be coming up. Hang on, there we go. This is the web app on Navionics.com. It's as you'll be able to see, you can zoom in, and this is the problem, it goes slow. You can zoom in on different areas and kind of look around. So, like I said, I travel around the state a lot to the West Coast, to Fort Myers area, Naples, the Keys, Tampa. So if I happen to be fishing that weekend, and I fished in a tournament a couple of weeks ago in Fort Myers, and I did this before I left, it gives you a chance to kind of go on and see what the area you're fishing looks like, and helps you maybe pick out a couple spots that you want to try before you get on the water. In this case, we're talking offshore. So what I would be looking for these are 1 foot contours. So I would be looking for drops and humps and hills, any kind of bottom variation that might hold fish. This brown spot or black spot that looks like a fingerprint at the top of your screen is actually it's a pretty popular spot out here out of Stewart. It's called the Sand Pile. But if you zoom in on it, you'll see why it's pretty popular. You can see at the top, it goes from about 52 or 50 feet, and it comes up to 35 feet at the very middle, which means that's a 15-foot hill coming up and then going back down out about 3 miles offshore. That hill holds a ton of bait. It's always got fish on it, whether it's kingfish, snapper, there's cobia out there in the spring. But it's these kind of contours, these kind of lines that I'm looking for when I'm going offshore anytime. Whether it's a hill like that or a ledge. It's going to catch up in a second. Something like this that drops from about 270 feet, and it drops pretty quickly down to about 450 feet. So that's a pretty good ledge going down. It's something that I'm going to want to troll around, just kind of follow on my chart on my plotter. Just try to stay in line with that ledge and keep the baits as in line with that as possible. Now, that's good for me because that's 13 miles offshore. And if I get caught up in the Gulf Stream, I can turn right back around and come back. Christina, on the other hand, would rather fish, and here, you can go ahead and figure this out. I was trying to get down.
We're like kayak fishermen are like little warriors out at sea.
So she's looking for things that are a little closer to shore. She doesn't want to be 13 miles offshore in her kayak, and I don't blame her.
Well, I do want to be 13 miles offshore in my kayak. I just sometimes don't really have that availability. What inlet is this?
That's Lake Forest.
Oh. Is it?
That's Palm Beach.
No, it's Palm Beach. I was going to say it.
Again.
That's why, yeah. I'm like, Lake Worth. Yeah. Sorry, we're going to head south here. Just for kayak purposes. Did I pass it?
Yeah, you passed it. Go back up.
Oh, there it is. All right. All right. So as a kayak fisherman, we don't have a lot of, there's pros and cons. We don't have like a ton of availability to get up and run around or maybe launch right out where we want to. Now you can fish out of Palm Beach, you can fish out of St. Lucie, you can fish out of Fort Pierce, you can fish wherever you want. But we're going to be limited. The further north we go, it's going to be really tough to really get offshore. You can fish near the beach, but you're not going to really like get off into the blue water. So I try to head down south. You can head as far south almost as you want to go. Give it maybe to like, I don't know, probably north of Miami to Boynton is going to be better for kayaking. I like to go out of Boynton because the stream is very close and I don't have to go very far. So I can kind of launch from Boynton. I can hop out offshore, and one of, you can look on your charts here. Like we don't even need to get very far. You can see there's right off of the inlet, there is a reef. But in order to fish that reef that's right here, I don't know how to, this reef. So in order to fish this reef right here, as a kayaker, you can't actually launch from the beach where you think you would probably launch. You actually have to launch south. Yes, this reef. So if you wanted to fish this reef, in a boat, you can just blast out the inlet. But because in a kayak, you actually need to launch further south, which I can show you. Uh-oh. It's okay. Just further south over here somewhere. I don't know. You could just scribble on there.
What do you want?
I want just over here, just south. Like you just have to launch south. Because what you're going to do is you're going to launch here. And by the time you get out here, your boat is going to be here. And then you'll end up wanting to start your drift and fish that. You want to be prepared to fish everything in the kayak before you actually get to it. This is a pretty good diagram right there, actually.
That is professional.
That's pretty good. So, oh gosh. Oh my gosh, I can draw on there.
Yeah, look at that.
I'm done. Okay. What I'm going to be looking for, and I preach this all the time. I preach this in my writing. I preach this in seminars, and it works with everything. So I didn't show you anything crazy or anything remarkable, but as Mike was saying, he's going to pinpoint on these certain things, and he's probably going to run around a little. In a kayak, we can't really do that a little bit. So we really have to plan ahead. In the summertime, we're going to drift a lot faster. So we want to, 'tis the season, everything changes. If I was to go today, I'd probably launch on the north side of the inlet, and I don't even know if I'd fish that reef. It just depends on what I want to fish for. If you want to, just depends. So you don't have to actually paddle all the way out there. There are fish everywhere. If you wanted to sail fish, they're sometimes in 90 feet of water, even shallower. 30 feet. Yeah. The nice thing about going down to Boynton is that it gives you that availability, a lot of water to fish. You can fish that 90 feet, but you can also go to 250 if you want to without getting swept up and pushing yourself 5 miles offshore. And, then you run into a few things that are dangerous, and we have all those storms in the summertime. So there's a lot of variables in the kayak, but you don't have to necessarily go to those key points a lot of times I'm just going to zigzag in. We just have to work with what we have. You have to just fish water. And sometimes it's not the best water, but if you're moving and you have your good baits out and you're kind of prepared for everything, not everything under the water holds fish. There's tons of stuff that's on the surface. You'll find like a rip. You'll find a weed line. You'll find something floating. There's all sorts of things that you can find. So even if you can't get to those certain points, like finding something that's very different, you want to key in on those and be prepared for those. And what I tell people is that, like, we're always hunting the difference. So you have this flat land. It's the same thing underwater as above water. You know, you want to find something that's different, whether it's a hump or I don't know. Where you had a few things. You were sand piles, rock piles. There's all sorts of things that we're gonna find. Reefs. You always want to be prepared to fish those in the kayak, but you can't just tell yourself that you're only going to fish those, because it's impossible. You'll never accomplish anything. The stream's going to push you past it too fast, and sometimes in the summertime we only are able to do one drift in the kayak. You really, really have to capitalize on that one drift and be prepared. Have 2 good baits out and vertical jig it. I know it's a lot of rods, it's a lot of things, but that's part of kayak fishing. That's part of the mayhem and the madness that we bring upon ourselves. I think it's fun. We don't have a boat full of buddies that can grab a rod or this or that. It's all on us, but that's why I do it, and that's why I love it. So,
and to follow up on what she was saying about, fish the water and always keep an eye out. You never know what you're going to find. There have been days when we've heard sailfish are in 250 feet, and we've headed that way and seen things like these flying fish, or seen free jumping sailfish in 100 feet or 120 feet, and stop there and fish there. So always be aware when you're out there on the water. Always be aware of what's around you. Everybody thinks of them as being a deep water fish, and everybody goes deep, but we've caught plenty of sailfish in 30 to 60 feet of water.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things about being in the kayak is that we have to almost appreciate every subtle change. We see in a boat, you see flying fish all the time. Sometimes you just take it for granted. You don't actually pay much attention to them. Oh, there's a flyer. Oh, good. We got bait here. That's cool. But in the kayak, that's a big deal for us, because we're not running miles around. If there's a bunch of flying fish that do anything, you need to focus on that. You need to cast at that with your plug or whatever you have tied on. And you need to just drift. I can't stress enough that the more natural your presentation is and the more natural your drift is, if you're headed in that direction, just head in that direction. You don't need to start paddling around and doing anything crazy. Just go, because the fish is there. And if he's there, he's going to see your bait. It's not, he sees you in the kayak.
All right, well, here we have a question real quick. The Gulf Stream has a flow of about 5 knots, give or take. Do you attempt to paddle back, or are you picked up further north?
Yeah, so the Gulf Stream, as you said, give or take, it definitely changes, and sometimes it actually does move south. So you have to be prepared for those days, and if somebody can tell me when it does that, more power to you. I don't actually know. There's been too many times where I get on the water and it's actually moving south, and it really jacks up my entire plan. I don't know when it does that. Love to learn. But you can't, in 5 knots, we can't actually paddle back into that. The kayak, as fast as you can go, is about 5 knots. And that's with a pretty light kayak, and like an Outback, not like a pro angler or something like that. That's about as fast as we can go. So you will not get that chance to go and make another drift. That's why it's kind of very, very crucial that you do set yourself up way before you get to what you want to drift over. And honestly, the only time I'm ever wanting to, it's a wreck or a reef or something, that's the only time I really try to set myself up. Other times, I'm just zigzagging, depending on the time of year, I'm zigzagging between 80 feet of water and 300 feet of water. And I want to catch fish in 250, and I want to catch fish in 90. But I cover all of that because I don't actually know sometimes what's happening or where they moved or what has changed.
It's a lie. She always knows.
I don't know.
We talked about this real briefly. I just chose this picture because it was symmetrical and pretty, and I like symmetrical and pretty.
You like set yourself up for the craziest situations right here.
So
like,
this is the perfect setup for going offshore fishing. Well, except there's the spinning reels in there and your pitch rod's up front, but you can't see that. So, but this is the idea. You want to have not necessarily this overboard, but you want to have multiple rods to do the same thing. You know, if you do catch a sailfish or you do catch a wahoo or something and it breaks you off, you want to be able to get another rod back in the water as quickly as possible. The best way to do that is to have a backup exactly the way that you had the first one set up. Again, this looks like a sailfish tournament, probably.
I don't know. Those are like 50s.
Man, they got chairs. They're all good. So anyway, I just wanted to talk real quick about that, just to touch on the different kinds of reels. Have your rods ready, have backups ready, because offshore is a whole lot different than inshore. Once things start going offshore, they go offshore, and they get going pretty quickly. You don't necessarily have the chance to re-rig, and re-rigging is a little more difficult with some of the offshore knots and lures that you're using. So I just wanted to touch on that before we went to circle hooks. I'm a huge believer in circle hooks. Circle hooks are great once you learn that you're not trying to Bassmaster fish a dolphin out of the water with a gigantic jerk.
Okay, there's an actual reason to why you have to do that in bass fishing, to clarify.
But with circle hooks, you don't. It's easy.
But we're not circle hook fishing with a worm.
Well, we're circle hook fishing with
filters.
I'm just saying. Circle hooks all day long. You can you can let the fish eat. You don't have to worry about nailing them at just the right time. You can hook a sailfish, count to 10, reel down on it till you feel it tight, and just keep reeling. It's the easiest thing in the world once you learn how to do it. I know offshore, I went completely circle hooks about 7 years ago. You fish circle hooks you fish J hooks at all?
No, I fish all circle hooks.
See, we agree on something.
I think they're easier. I think they're like dummy rigging things, to be honest, but for some reason they do seem to be difficult for people to get used to. Yeah.
Once you figure out that you don't have to, again, do the whole big hook set, jerk, fall back, and reel while you're doing it, just let it ease down and hook it every time, the corner of the mouth, almost every time in the corner of the mouth. It makes releasing them easier. It makes reeling them in easier, and you don't lose nearly as many hooks. I don't.
I get all my hooks for the most part.
Yeah, right. So when we're not live bait fishing, which is hardly ever.
Okay, for me, for this guy, all he knows is live animals.
Occasional, like I said, pitch rod. This is a perfect pitch rod. Okay. But some of the lures you want to use offshore are, and I'm going to let Christina talk about this because she's much better lure fisherman than I am. But the ones in the middle, the Uzuri sashimi poppers are one of my go-to lures offshore. I've caught almost every kind of fish on them. We fished down in Costa Rica and Panama on them like for 3 weeks straight and caught everything you can catch. I believe in them. They're great. They have a great action. They're durable, and they're one of the ones that I throw more often than not. Now, these are lures that Christina's picked out because she likes to fish lures more than me, so I'm going to let her talk about the diving ones.
The diving ones. Like the peon with your diving
They're
lures.
not filtered.
Well, sometimes you have to pull things in the kayak. We'll lose a bunch of baits, and you want to be able to finish. I know I keep saying it, but like, we don't have the availability to say like, well, we're out of bait, let's go in. Like, woohoo! Sometimes you run out of bait. So it's nice to have some other options that you can pull behind the kayak. It's nothing serious, but a lot of times you do catch a lot of fish on things like this. I mean, you'll be surprised. Snapper, grouper, they'll come up and eat a diving plug. Just, it depends on how deep it's going, but they'll eat it. And I like on the right-hand side, there's like a kind of a shorter, like a smaller one. That's something that I'll have on like my pitch rod. Something that like if there's dolphin, I can kind of just, or if I want to catch bait, like if I need a bonita or something, they'll eat that. And then there's the top water, but I don't use too much of the top water around here locally. I want to, but I don't. I have a tendency to like lean towards more like throwing the vertical jig or something, like if I have availability. But now in Panama, I will throw that the entire time I'm there. So I think it just, when we transplant those rooster fish here, which we talked about the last time, I'll be throwing a lot more topwater.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
But a lot of fish will eat it, so that's why I put it.
So one of the things that a lot of offshore anglers like to do is they like to have their squid daisy chains coming out behind their boat. They like to have their dredges, squid dredges down 6 or 8 feet below the boat, and they're pulling all this to stimulate schools of fish and to attract whatever's around to come to their boat. I've been on a couple boats where they use everything they can find. Squid, flying fish, dredges, daisy chains. They'll have like flatline teasers, and then they'll have like 4 baits in the water, which makes no sense. You've got more teasers out than you do baits. Key is don't go overboard. You're just trying to get fish's attention, let them know you're there. There's live baits there, generally speaking. It's just something to kind of accentuate what you've already got going on. You don't need to pound them over the head with it.
And kayak fishing kind of teaches you a lot of little things like that. We may not have the most successful days. We may not catch the biggest fish, but there's plenty of times where some of the biggest wahoo have been caught from a kayak in that particular month, or whatever the case might be. Like, I guess what I love about kayak fishing is that you kind of get to take a step back, and I think about like the old man in the sea. Like, he's not pulling daisy chains, he's not doing all these crazy things. And I like to think about stuff like that.
He
like
almost died.
And I've almost died as a freaking kayak too, so I get it. But sometimes you can capitalize on underthinking. So
we just got a question. Somebody asked, what's our go-to color? I think that kind of depends on where you're fishing and what you're fishing for.
I'll throw like the bonita colors, mullet colors, and the redhead with the white body a lot. That's going to be pretty like go-to for me.
And I like the dolphin. I like the dolphin colors because I think, dolphin like dolphin. And again, the mullet, the black back with the silver body that's my go-to, whether I'm inshore or offshore.
And there's that like Spanish mackerel color too that is good. So you could, whatever they're chewing. So whatever bait's going on.
Pilchards. I love my pilchards. We all know that already. Again, why am I going to throw lures that look like pilchards when I can have a live well full of pilchards?
Because it makes you feel better about casting something and catching it on artificial sometimes.
That's not true. My dolphin dinner tastes just the same with a pilchard in its belly as it does with a Uzuri crystal minnow in its mouth. So pilchards, anytime we go offshore, I always try to have more than a 5-gallon bucket full of pilchards. I'm talking
blacked out live wells.
60-gallon live wells. Again, nothing beats live bait when you're fishing for real big fish. So pilchards, again, my favorite slide of the whole show.
I know, you do love that slide. I can't wait to delete that thing one day. I use goggle eyes, actually, by the way, if anyone is wondering. And I catch them from the kayak at 1 a.m. Pretty serious.
That's why you've almost died.
That and amongst some other things.
Yes.
But yes.
We talked about setting yourself up a little bit. Christina kind of showed you how to do a drift. We could go over that again, but it's the same kind of thing. You're going to want to have everything in the water. If you're bottom fishing, if you're mid-range fishing, you want everything in the water before you hit that wreck. You know how fast the current's moving because your plotter is going to tell you 2.3 knots, whatever it is.
Or your Navionics app on your phone will tell you too.
Or your
as kayak fishermen, if you don't have that, it'll actually, all of that stuff will be on your phone.
So you're going to know how fast the drift is. You know the wreck or the reef or whatever you're trying to fish is coming up. You can see it right here on your screen. What you want to do is try to drift right across the top of it on your plotter. Clear it. Make sure you're good and clear. I've had people reel up thinking they're clear. They're reel up and they're right on top of the reef. They only fished about the first 4 feet of it. So make sure you're good and clear. And if you're in a 22-foot Pathfinder, you just whip right back around and get back in line and do it again. If you're in a kayak, you just get to drift to the next reef that's north of you.
That's kind of why I was mentioning earlier that it's really important that you do set yourself up and wherever your reef is, that you're prepared to fish it a lot further than it's actually marked on your map, because there's things leading up to that. There's going to be bait. There's going to be other rocks. There's going to be other structures. It could be anything. So and we have to literally capitalize on every little tiny thing that we can in the kayak. So even if you don't think you're over it, or even if you think you've already passed it, you need to continue to fish it, because fish sit off of that. You know, they're sitting off waiting. It's ambush points too. There's these bigger fish. You might find a bigger wahoo that's hanging out, waiting for something to come off. You just don't know. So we need to really be prepared to fish all of those things. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes we cannot fish it again. So being prepared is pretty important.
So this is going to be my favorite part of the whole webinar. What do you do when you're in a kayak and you catch a sailfish?
You start screaming and you try to Instagram story the whole thing. I don't know. I honestly, these fish scare me the least out of everything I've ever caught. I've caught so many of them. I think they're pretty easy when you get them to the boat. I think one of the biggest things when you do have something next to a kayak that I've learned over the year, well, I've learned this in a boat. This is something I even brought back from me when fishing out of a boat. But in the kayak, I think it's even more important. Once I have that leader, it's like simultaneously I try to grab a leader and I try to like loosen the drag, because if that fish decides to freak out or it decides to do something, which happens, things happen all the time. I had a friend that was bit by a kingfish the other day, and he's caught 1 million kingfish. So the more comfortable you get, the more dangerous I think it is. And I try to always remind myself of that, like, because I'm very comfortable with these fish. I feel safer with them than I do driving down the road. So I try to loosen my drag and set the rod in the rod holder if I can, and grab, if it's a sailfish, I just grab him by the bill. He's fine. He's going to shake, but it's nothing serious. It's like sandpaper. I don't even grab him with gloves sometimes. Sometimes I do, but I don't have to. I think if you're catching a bunch of them, it's probably best that you do, but you don't need to. I do get the hooks out of them. I will work to try to get the hooks out of them. I've noticed that sailfish do all sorts of crazy things. They jump around and they put on a show. So a lot of times they'll wrap around all sorts of line all over their bill, and it can take me a little bit to get it off, but it's really not that tough if you just stick them in the water. And with because I fish out of a Hobie, I have the Mirage Drive, which is the pedal system. I can actually pedal myself. If the current's pushing me north, I'm going to paddle myself south, because by the time I get all of this done, I take my photo, I release the fish, I'm a quarter of a mile where I caught this fish, and I'm disoriented. I don't actually know what had just happened. I'm excited. So I instantly really try to keep myself in position as much as possible, if not mark myself immediately. But it's really not that tough. You can keep them in the water. I don't know. Sailfish are seem to be the least of my worries. I'm waiting for it to pull a marlin in the boat when it wants to kill me, and it's like raging angry. Tarpon are pretty gnarly. The issue it comes is that in a kayak we have a tendency to fight fish a lot longer. So you can end up killing the fish. So I try to almost get the fish to the boat as fast as possible, and they still can be a little green. So they can be a little bit more crazier, like the tarpon. I try really, really hard to get tarpon back to the boat as fast as possible. And they're not as easy to grab as a sailfish. I have a bill to hold on to that's pretty small. And a tarpon's going to have lips that are this big, and I'm trying to hold on to them, and there's current, and there's all sorts of things going on. So I think it just depends on the fish that you're chasing. If I can kill it, I'm going to kill it, and I'm just going to throw it in my feet, and I'm going to let it die. I'm going to obviously gaff it. And do what I need to do depending on what kind of fish it is.
So if you catch a tuna, you're going to gaff it and throw it on your foot, basically.
Yeah.
And then that's going to leak blood down through your kayak.
It does. Exactly. And you can bleed them out if you want in the kayak or whatever you need to do. But yeah, it's crazy. I might be sounding like it's easy. You're in the water with them. I think my biggest fear is that a lot of times when you have a fish that's in distress, if there's a shark around, it knows. And it's going to come. I mean, you read stories, you see photos all the time about the tax collector. He comes and you get your fish. Well, what does he do when he comes up to a boat? It's a boat. Who cares? If he hits the side of the kayak, that could be pretty dangerous. So I do try really hard to be aware of all the situations that can take place. And I do try to get that fish in the boat as fast as possible. If I really don't think I can catch it, I mean, it's me or the fish, and it's going to be me. So if I have to cut the line, I have to cut the line, or whatever it is. I mean, I just got to be safe. I'm not usually really close to somebody. So it's not like I have like a buddy that's sitting right next to me that if something does go wrong, he's going to see it immediately. I will have to call for help. So I have to just weigh my options. Yeah.
There you go. See, most informative part of the whole night, other than use filters.
You can get a lipper. I mean, there's so many things. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. Take your time.
And take your time is probably the key. And that goes for if you're in a boat as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's no reason to skip a sailfish across the water and get into the boat as quick as possible. And, you know. Yeah,
enjoy it. But, you know, just enjoy the moment. I mean, you're allowed to keep a sailfish. So if you kill them, I mean, whatever. You have smoked fish.
There you go.
I'm all about killing things.
Picking up on it. I think that's about all we have for tonight. If anybody has any questions, feel free to stick them in the Q&A box. If not, those are our email addresses. Feel free to email me anytime you want about any kind of questions you've got, fishing, Navionics, where's a good place to have a cheeseburger in Stewart, whatever you want to know. Christina, I'm sure, can answer all those questions too. I'm not seeing any questions, so thank you guys very much for showing up tonight. Have a good time. There's a question. If you waste enough time,
you gotta give them a second to type it.
Well, thank you, Galaxy Tab has too. Cool, guys. Thank you very much. Have a great night.